is familiar with the background of the concerns relating to the cause of the Stardust fire. But, Madam Minister, the cause of the fire was not in the terms of reference of Paul Coffey, Senior Counsel. And you state that Deputy Shatter is familiar with and knows about the cause of the fire. Then if he does, that is in itself new evidence. Madam Minister, it's not competent of Minister Adder Shatter to withhold this evidence about the cause of the fire. Madam Minister, get it into your head and into the head of Minister Shatter that the Victims Committee's long-running campaign for a new inquiry is into the cause of the unlawful killing and maiming of their loved ones. Madam Minister, how were the victims killed and maimed, and who was responsible for their deaths and injuries? Madam Minister, you referred to the making some years ago of a detailed submission making the case for a new inquiry, criticising the original tribunal. Madam Minister, set out the true facts that surround the unlawful killing and maiming of your loved ones. Madam Minister, you state that the professional advice that was given to the government at the time was given by Maurice Garrett, who drew a plan of the Stardust building with a basement. Madam Minister, a 2004 report and a 2008 Garda correspondence that was concealed from the families and the researchers, it confirmed that under oath there was a basement in the Stardust ballroom. Madam Minister, there was no basement in the Stardust. Madam Minister, you stated that professional advice that was given to the government at the time. Madam, it was given by Garda Norton. His oath relied on hearsay evidence as to the origin of the fire on the seat in the West Alcove. Madam Minister, you also stated professional advice was given to the government at the time. Madam, it was given under oath by Garda Quinn, who invented a glass wall between the storeroom and the ballroom, so that the dancing patrons would have seen the fire if it had been burning in the storeroom. Madam Minister, evidence was given by David Tucker, consultant to Dublin Corporation, who, under oath, he relied on the hearsay evidence of Garda Quinn and his invention of a glass wall between the first floor storeroom and the ballroom. Madam Minister, there was no glass wall. Madam Minister, the fire started in the first floor storeroom that was packed tightly between the walls and up to the roof with combustible materials. This is new evidence. The fire was first seen to be through the roof by numerous external witnesses around 1:25. Minister, this is new evidence. Madam Minister, the fire was first seen in the ballroom around 1:42 by the staff and patrons. According to Justice Keene's timeline record on page 97 of his tribunal report, there was a 99 call to the Garda about a missing handbag, and not about any fire at 1:42 in the morning. This is new evidence. Madam Minister, 3 telephone calls were independently verified as having been received by the Fire Brigade control room at 1:43 a.m. Justice Keene acknowledged only one of those phone calls on page 97 of his report. This is new evidence. Minister, Justice Keene stated that the fire only reached the roof at 1:46. This is concocted evidence. Madam Minister, the entire Stardust roof had collapsed at 1:46 and 44 patrons were therefore dead. This is new evidence. Madam Minister, you stated that the professional advice that was given to the government at the time was given by the Director of the Forensic Science Laboratory, Dr. Sheila Willis, on 2 occasions. This evidence was hearsay and perverse conjecture with the deliberate intent to exonerate her colleagues. Madam Minister, Dr. Willis perversely relied on the perjury evidence of Garda Norton, Quinn, Tucker and the seriously flawed content of the 1981 Tribunal of Inquiry document. Minister, officers of the state have conspired together to frame up and support false evidence, to deceive government ministers, the Taoiseach and the families of the victims and the world. Madam Minister, you stated a couple of days ago that the argument being presented did not amount to new evidence. Madam Minister, the facts presented proved that the Keene evidence was founded on false testimony under oath, as well as invention and incompetence, and the frame-up was clearly intended to deceive Justice Keene, the families of the dead, the maimed, and the world at large. Minister, you said what Paul Coffey was appointed to do. Minister, his remit was clearly not to go anywhere near the cause of the fire. However, Paul Coffey, the senior counsel, the eminent legal person, he failed and neglected to adhere to his remit, and he failed to act either impartially, nor objectively, nor professionally. Madam Minister, his appointment in terms of reference were agreed with the Victims Committee and his legal representatives. Paul Coffey, senior counsel, failed and neglected to supply the committee with the submissions of all the other parties in accordance with his terms of reference. Madam Minister, Paul Coffey, senior counsel, was prohibited by his terms of reference from investigating the cause of the fire. Paul Coffey, senior counsel, failed and neglected to follow his terms of reference. Madam Minister, you stated that the committee was given considerable financial assistance to make its case. Madam Minister, your statement was not correct, and it's a gross insult to the committee, because the committee and its researchers received no financial assistance whatsoever for its years of research. The Paul Coffey senior counsel reported an independent examination on the subsequent research and reports. Madam Minister, you have a duty now to provide evidence that the committee and its researchers received financial assistance. Madam Minister, only the legal team received considerable financial assistance, not the committee. Madam Minister, you have a duty to confirm to the families that the committee and its professional researchers received no financial assistance whatsoever. Madam Minister, you also stated that it had a full legal team to present the case over 3 days of hearings. Madam Minister, the 3 days of hearings were devoted entirely to my professional evidence and that of the other professional researchers, Geraldine Foy, and other witnesses of fact. Madam Minister, it was also a known matter of fact that no one present on the night can be held responsible. What you said was this was a key concern for the many people in the central component of the committee's criticism of the original tribunal. Madam Minister, it took 27 years on our diligent research to extract the truth and have the fact that the evidence proved that arson was not the cause, and that was placed on public record. Madam Minister, without our research, no alteration of the public record would have occurred. Madam Minister, you also stated that Mr. Coffey concluded that in the absence of any identified evidence about the cause of the fire. Madam Minister, Paul Coffey was prohibited by his terms of reference from investigating the cause of the fire, and that's that. As a matter of fact, that Paul Coffey failed and neglected to properly follow his terms of reference. It's an insult, and he insulted the families of the deceased and maimed. Madam Minister, you stated that the motion our inquiry would achieve would be another set of hypothetical findings which would not be in the public interest. Madam Minister, determination of the truth by way of the already known and sworn facts of evidence is in the public interest without any supposition. Madam Minister, the families of the dead and maimed deserve the truth as of right in accordance with their constitutional right to life. Madam Minister, the families have had enough of the demeaning rhetoric imposed upon them by the officers and officials of this state. Madam Minister, you stated that members of the committee have continued to contend that their theory on the cause of the fire reflects what transpired. Madam Minister, the committee and their researchers have never expounded any theory on the cause of the fire. It is a matter of fact that the fire killed and maimed and destroyed so many lives and affected so many families in Ireland and around the world, despite the known facts of shortcomings in the building and the expected duty of care by the owners, operators, Dublin Corporation and the officials of the Irish State.
I just want to cut in there. Now, Robin has written to Kathleen Lynch, and you see, there's a problem here, right? Because if somebody dies, there are laws in our constitution that literally says that the right to life has to be validated by an effective investigation. So Kathleen Lynch has taken her ministerial position, as Alan Shaffer has, as Enda Kenny has, as Amy Gilmer has, that, you know, Brian Cowan did, and the other fellow, his sidekick, I think it was John Gormley, and Bertie Ahern and Michael McDowell, they all done the same mistake. If somebody is unlawfully killed, the state and its criminal laws doesn't allow for politicians, lay people, Joe public, or anybody touch that investigation. They're not allowed an opinion, they can't give a consent of an opinion, and they cannot give an argument. So what I'm saying is, the statute is clear. If there is an unlawful killing, the state has a duty to validate the right to life of that individual. Now, if the evidence is incorrect, they have to retest this case again to validate that right to life. There's no argument. Kathleen Lynch should not be saying these things in the dance floor. Your man, Ellen Shatter, shouldn't be sending her out there to say those things. And Kenny shouldn't be even commenting on evidence. Neither should Shatter. I know Amy Gilmore hasn't said that because I've been watching him too. But nobody in our constitution or in the world is entitled to have an opinion on that right to life that was unlawfully killed, because it is of the utmost importance. That's why criminal laws in manslaughter, unlawfully killed and murder have the highest threshold test. And the dead don't speak for themselves. The evidence is supposed to speak for the dead. You're supposed to find out, you know, these people went to a disco, they were healthy, they thought he'd wake up in their beds the next morning. Unfortunately, they ended up in a body bag and they didn't come home. And then we now are going to switch to what actually happened to them. But there was a lot of things that, you know, this is what the state's not going to tell you. We know that in July 1980, Eamon Butterley's main switch breaker had arced. Now, a main switch breaker is, if you're in your house, you know, this is the thing you pull up and down if you notice, I'll go with the electrics. But normally most people are supposed to get a competent electrician, right? The DSB guy turns up in July 1980. He says to Butterley and his maintenance man, look, you know what, Eamon? That main switch breaker has arced, right? It's actually burning the fuse between the dividing line of the ESB line and the line that's going upstreams through this fuse. The fuse is on fire, right? So Butterley says to the ESB guy, he says, you know, I have a disco here tonight and I have to get the place open and I haven't got time to get an electrician. So the ESB guy gives him the advice to change the fuse, keep the system downloaded. Don't put any more modifications on it, and please, please get yourself a competent electrician. So from July 1980 up to the 13th of February 1981, the staff had a system of an electrical system that was deteriorating. So when you look at electrics, I can just take the pen and get this off, and I'll bring my hand and show this one. If you imagine that the blue biro, the ink part here is the copper wire in the electrics, right? And you imagine that the plastic tube is the PVC that covers. So when electrics are arcing, it means that where the ink is, the copper wire, is burning the electrics inside out, right? Is that right, Rob?
That's correct, yeah.
Right. So,
overhead cable.
From this date in July 1980, Mr. Butterley had his heating system had broken a motor a few times. Now that would tell us that, you know, the electrics couldn't distribute the upstream load of electricity. In other words, they couldn't stop too much going up. So, you know, imagine that this is your fuse, ESB, the fuse in the middle, the upstream thing. So there was too much electricity going upstream. And you only get that when you've had your electrical wires burning inside out, because the system is deteriorating. So to keep the electrics under control, Mr. Butterley told the staff, look, don't turn the heating on. We're going to have the Jemmy Towers in tonight. Isn't that right, Ron? The Jemmy Towers are currents in discos that draw so much electricity up, right? They give the wattage to the speaker so you get your sounds around the area, but you also have to have your lights, and you have to have, because they serve chicken and chips and sausage and chips, you also have your cookers going, and you have your, you know, your pumps going, and there's all this electricity. So they had a habit of, let's keep the heating off, right? So on the day of the fire, his electrical system was so deteriorated that on the 15th of January 1981, the public resorts guy, O'Donoghue, am I right? The boss fellow was Lowe. O'Donoghue goes to the Stardust and he's just checking it out. And he sees that there's extra lights added. And he says to the butlers, you need to take them down. You need to get them out of here. So Lowe was asked at the tribunal, you heard from your Mr. O'Donoghue, what happened? Well, he said, I normally send the letter out 3 weeks, but I didn't because the place burned down to the ground 2 weeks. So we now come up to the night of the fire. We've had all this electrical arcing and it's all going on. And basically, there's a human error thing. Because the maintenance guy was fitting a screen up above the ceiling space where the heating so it was kept. And the guy turns up to do his job and he's in the bar and Catherine Hunter comes in and she hears this conversation between the floor manager and the bar, and she says to the guy, why is the heating off the place? It's freezing. And her man says, oh, PJ was fixing it today. Well, PJ wasn't fixing the heat today. PJ was fitting a brack for a cinema screen. So he turns on the heat, right? He turns it up. And then we have at 9:30 at the cigarette machine, which would be in about here, there's a smell of paraffin oils. The police were asked, would you explain that smell? And they said, oh well, there must have been a truck turned up and it was filling diesel into the tank outside. But we rejected that because we said we have a door here, we have a hallway, we have another door, and then we have the cigarette machine. So this fume has to go too far, right? So that was wrong. We then have guys in the Silver Swan bar, which I think is here, right? And by 10:30, they're two qualified electricians. They're sitting and they're looking at the Silver Swan neon light, and it's flickering on and off, okay? It's flickering on and off. By about 1 o'clock, we have toilets. I think they're here, is that right? No, they're on this side. We have toilets here. And by 1 o'clock, there's a girl called McLaughlin, and there's somebody else, and they're in the toilets. And they're now getting the smells of like oils burning, right? Now allow the fact that this storeroom contained a lot of oil, but they didn't specify, was it lavender oil, was it calamine oil, they just said there was oils burning. So by 1:20, the DJ's box, because the earth system was broken down into distribution of MCCB boards. In other words, if there's a power outage there, it won't affect over here. Now, it took us a while to get this research and nib it down. But by 1:20, he has a power